joining. I think I've gone through the whole list. All right. So we'll go to the business of the day. Since you don't want to talk and I don't want to be a gap, I will have to do the talking. Anyway, so I'm trying to solve the talking gap here. So I'll share my screen and then we'll pick it up from there. Kindly confirm if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? What do you see? Do you see a PDF or something?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for that confirmation. So today I want to just look at briefly. I cannot teach you how to read a paper, but I'm trying to guide you in reading your paper. For the question that came across in the feedback from the how do we read a paper generally, right? So we don't read a paper word to word from top to finish. I think I've mentioned this before. However, today we want to adapt a certain approach to reading, okay? So just like Mr. Bauer said, if you copy quote, so I'm quoting Michael Spector, who says that be very skeptical, right? In life, just don't allow anything that is thrown at you to be your truth, right? Try and inspect what is going on. But when you get the proof, just accept the proof. That's what he says. Then I also further quote and say that then question the accepted proof and start the journey again of that whole skeptical process. Because in research, that's the whole essence of it. If you just accept the proof as it is, then we will not go beyond the barriers of the current research that we have. So in as much as we accept a lot of proof from the literature, in this case, we still have to question the literature or ask some questions that the literature may have not answered yet, right? So usually we say that you can skim the paper quickly. They also say quickly. I don't know how quick is that quickly, but you can't skim and scan life like that, okay? And always be skimming and scanning papers when you don't even know what you are looking out for, right? You just glance the paper quickly and then I've read so many papers. I've read 1,000 papers. I've downloaded over 60 papers. I read so many papers, but I still cannot find the right literature, or I still cannot find something back in my study. I know some of us may have said that. Maybe no, I don't think. Maybe at some point of my life, I may have said that, but these days I don't say that. You cannot read so many papers and still not get the answer. Perhaps the answer you are looking for is not there because you don't even know the question that you are looking for the answers to. So you don't have any question, you are just reading because reading is fun to you, right? Well, all the best with that. But we read with something in mind, and that's something to be a question that you are trying to find its answer. If that's not the whole essence of reading, then I don't know why you are reading. So reasons why we read academic literature. Of course, you could read a storybook because you are bored, but I don't think you should be reading academic literature because you just have nothing to do, right? So yes, the first reason is to find answers to questions that have been asked or someone asked you, right? Somebody asked you, it could be your supervisor, and then you were scratching your head. Oh, I don't know the answer to this question. So you go into the literature trying to find such answers, right? You also can go into the literature trying to find questions people have asked. Perhaps you feel you don't have any question to ask, like so many people on the call. You don't have any question to ask. Yes, if that is the same situation you are having in your research, then you can go into the literature, not to look for answers, but to look for questions people may have asked, right? That's another reason why you should be reading a paper. And then you try and find the big questions in that field, right? So every field has some general problem that has been there for ages. If it's about vaccine, maybe, I think HIV virus, it has a vaccine now, but I may be wrong. But there has been a long-standing question about a particular problem in the field. You try and read literature to find out such things, right? Especially if you are new in that field. And then you also do the literature to find out your novelty questions. So let's say in your research questions, you have about 10 questions. 8 of them may be completely answered. but two of them you realize that it's quite new and you can explore. So aside these four, you should not be reading the literature. You should not be scanning the literature. You should not be skimming the literature or glancing at the literature, as people say, right? I hope this one is clear and I can move on. These days, I'm not going to ask questions. If someone has a question, you stop me if you have a question. If not, I flow. Problem solving. We all have very good problem solving skills, okay? Even to come to China, even to travel for your study, even to decide to do a research. It means you're a good problem solver. However, we all have different levels of problem solving, right? And when you are reading this, you should put in mind that not every information on the paper is equal. That needs your attention or some level of your attention. Don't put 100% effort into getting the abstract. Don't put 100% effort into getting the introduction or reading the introduction. If you do that, by the time you get to methodology, of course, according to the economics people, they said there's some diminishing returns. So by the time you get there, your level naturally would have dropped. So your focus always is very apt from the beginning. Introduction, abstract, you get it. When you get to literature, you are getting it. Then when it's methodology, you are lost simply because your energy levels have dropped, right? And from so many studies that have been done, we only retain 10% of what we read. So if there are 7,000 words on that page or that paper, you can do the math, how much you remember. It may not even be equal to one abstract. So we should know in mind that when we are reading, not all the information is equal. So as much as possible, know where to focus and know where to put in more energy in trying to understand what, right? So there is this equation I brought up that you can put in your mind. If you want to understand the concept and its procedure, or that is underlying that particular paper, then your reasoning along the lines of the paper should be something that you are following clearly, right? So, okay, you're asking questions actively as you are going on, not that you are just accepting the proof from the paper, right? So you are reasoning, okay, whatever is coming, you are questioning it, the what, the hows, the whys. Okay, why did they say this? Why are they not saying this? Okay, if they didn't say this, is there a reason why they didn't say this? These are the things you should be doing when you are reading. If it means talking to yourself, talk to yourself whilst you are reading, so you can understand the paper, right? And then you ask yourself, what problems are there and how best can I solve it as you are reading, not after you finish reading. Actively reading, you're asking yourself questions and how can I solve this particular problem? And then the next thing is, how do I apply all this knowledge? You are good at reading. You've read over 60 papers, 100 papers concerning the topic, but you cannot apply any knowledge you've got so far, right? That's just synonymous to someone who has overeaten and overeaten, and then you start to vomit. You forget everything, and that's the process of vomiting, right? You didn't apply the knowledge you have. So let's keep that in mind when we read, okay? These are the level of problem solving that we've been trained to since the earliest stage of life, okay? So when you are in the very basic part of primary school, most of your test is about how much you can remember. And we say that the students who cannot remember anything are the dumb students. No, it's just because they have not trained themselves to remember that kind of um, approach to learning, right? Or trying to solve a problem. In this case, that exam question, right? And when you start growing, you get questions that test your understanding of a particular problem, perhaps let's say junior high school, and then maybe senior high school, you try to apply, right? And then now you get to your bachelor level where you're supposed to analyze stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of universities don't emphasize on this part of analyzing data that is thrown to them or analyzing knowledge. But that is what the whole essence of a bachelor is. And then you move to a master's where you're supposed to evaluate stuff, or perhaps not at a master level, but at a very high level of your education. You're supposed to evaluate whatever is thrown at you. And then perhaps at your PhD level or a higher level, you're supposed to create and recreate stuff, right? Talk about all the novelties, look for a problem that is not existing. But of course, everything, there's nothing new under the sun. So this is the levels of problem solving that we as researchers who are trying to read something should focus more on developing. So you read a paper, can you remember at least 10% of whatever is going on in that paper? If you are asked, that's a question you should be able to, at least 10%. Do you understand something in that paper, right? Can you apply whatever you've understood? And then analyzing different aspects of the information thrown at you from the paper. Can you evaluate? Okay, say that, okay, at the end of the day, this guy said this guy said this in this same paper, and I can do some kind of comparison. And from all this, you create a new paper out of the reading you read, right? So at which level do you feel like, okay, I'm not good at remembering stuff. Okay, then write it down, right? I do not understand. Then go back to the theory, go back to the very basics and try and read things that explain the theory so that when you come into that paper, you can really understand the terms, everything that is going on there. So sometimes your understanding may not come from that exact paper, but from another paper before you come back to that paper. Can I apply that knowledge? It means you have some skills, right? Before you can apply the basic knowledge from the paper. So if there's a code in that paper, can I replicate that code? If there's a method in that paper, can I replicate that particular method, right? So this, at that point of reading the paper, you must have a certain skill, else you will not understand the paper if you cannot apply. Okay, then you have to analyze what is going on here according to this etal. What are they saying? Does it support? Does it contrast? You must have that kind of level of problem solving, right? It may not be so like 100%, but at least have that part of problem solving skill, right? Then you evaluate at the end of all that I've read, what is going on in the literature? What are the questions? What are the answers? And therefore, what can I do next? The last part is always important. What can I create from this information I have? What can I recreate after going through all these 6 levels of problem solving whilst I'm actively reading the paper? I think I've spoken for about 18 minutes. So let me pause. Are there any questions so far? Any questions concerning reading a paper in terms of problem solving? Oh, okay. Trying to make me sad, but I refuse to be sad because when there are no questions, I am sad. I feel like I'm talking to myself. Anyway, okay, I see something in the chat box. Before I open it, I pray it's a question. Okay. And it's unfortunately not a question. All right, no problem. We still move on, right? Good, no problem. So
let's go ahead. Let's go ahead.
I
think maybe.
But
Yeah, sure.
if there are no questions from your student, it means two things. Why are you
No,
siding with only one?
I've been a teacher before. I don't want.
They have really understood what you are saying, and so there's no need for any question. Or maybe they didn't understand at all, but they are afraid to ask.
Good. That's just one aspect of it. Sometimes the teacher has just completely lost you and you are wondering, why am I even in this class? You see, so sometimes I just want to check which side of the page we are on, right? I'm also a student and I've been a teacher also, so I just want to analyze what's going on in the room. But hopefully, if you all say that there's no questions so far, then I'll move on, right? So according to the PACER approach, the P stands for problem solving, okay? Another P also that you will look at is the procedure, okay? So when you have a paper in front of you, the first thing you should look out for is the procedure. What procedure is going on in this paper? Okay, what do I mean by procedure? You are trying to answer the question how. So if there's no how in that particular paper, then you move on to the next step, which is analogy, right? If there's no analogy, then you move on to the next step, according to this approach. So when you open any paper, the first question is, how? How many hows do you find in this paper, and have they been answered totally or not answered, right? So the hows could come in terms of the methodology in the paper, right? So how did they do this? How did they do that, right? The protocols that they form, like they followed, the frameworks, the softwares they use, the techniques. So if you see things like this, these are trying to answer the question how. And when you are reading a paper, you should clearly see the hows in the paper. okay, is suitable usually for the methodology section of the paper. And how do we approach such sections of the paper? You should be in a condition where you can practice what you are reading. If you are reading a methodology session and you're on your bed, when they are instructing you, run this level of code or do this, then you know that you must skip that part of the paper for another time where you are seated behind a laptop and you can actually run that particular code or whatever they are teaching you, or whatever software. You can open the software. If it's Stata, if it's SPSS, if it's eViews, if it's PLS, you have opened the thing and whatever they are saying there, you can try it. Of course, you will get errors, but you don't read about Stata or PLS or all those softwares when you've not even opened the software. So the approach to tackle this part of the paper and for you to understand it is to really practice whatever the paper is telling you concerning the methodology. If they did this particular step, can I replicate it? If you don't do that, then you may not get a whole concept of what is going on in that particular section of the paper. And hence you will say, I read the methodology section, I didn't understand. You must not understand because you have not practiced it. If you are not in the situation where you cannot practice it, perhaps you don't have the software or you don't have the skills to run that software, then you go back to the skill building process before you come to that section of the paper concerning procedure. You have no business reading any procedure part of the paper if you are not in the condition to run the procedure. You can know all about the procedure from step 1 to step 2, step 3. You've read it, you can even cram it, but you have not practiced it yourself. Then skip that section of the paper. Don't read it. If you are reading methodology, you are in the position to execute it. All right. Then we come to analogy, right? So analogy is just basically when you were reading something in the paper, it triggered an idea you already had or a new idea that seemed to just came like a eureka moment, right? So there are section parts of the paper that maybe you read a sentence and you were like, okay, if I do it this way, it may help me in my research. So this part of the paper or this approach to reading or trying to find the analogies in the paper that you can relate with. Perhaps all the equations on the sheet or on the paper, you don't understand, but there's one part, one line of the whole paper that you can relate to, even how to sweep a room or how to clean or how to bath or something, or a procedure you know already, or some knowledge from another field that you can borrow. That's where the interdisciplinary research comes in. You realize that you're a business student, but because you have background knowledge in, let's say, computer science, they said something, and then you now bring in that idea from computer science. Or let's say you are a health personnel, and you are now doing, let's say, engineering, and you read a paper in engineering, and you bring something from the health perspective, and that will become something novel in your paper. So this is how we read the paper from the analogy perspective. Okay, so it can bring an old idea or a totally new thought that maybe nobody had thought about it, and you are the first person and you just got it because you read a certain line in the paper, right? And sometimes it can come from the introduction session because of just one line they said, or even the methodology, because analogies can also be under procedure, right? And the way to approach analogy parts of the paper is you criticize. If you are not actively criticizing things in the paper, asking yourself questions and not just passively reading the thing, you will not get analogies. If you don't examine stuff, if you don't compare and contrast stuff, then you read the whole part that could have triggered an idea and you miss the whole point because you were not looking at something that you can connect with. Perhaps the whole paper is confusing, but something in there, or maybe even how the graph looks like the route to your house, like a map. So you try and connect, okay, so if I'm into computer science and I'm writing this code, perhaps if I use the tracking algorithm, it will help. And you just got the idea because the shape looks like your batch schedule to the house, or it looks like something that is totally different from the topic. And you are trying to borrow that knowledge into the paper immediately as you are reading. Okay. Then the second or the third part, which is the C, the concept. Other concepts in the paper, and this, you try and connect each concept to each other, right? That's the difference between a beginner in research and an expert in research. an expert in research. Someone who's a beginner reads all the thing, looks like so many words on the page, looks like so many ideas. But a professor or an expert sees the different concepts that are spread across the paper and tries to connect them to build a new research. So it's answer the question, what? Right? These are facts and explanations. These are relationships between variables. These are theories and principles between concepts and applications. Okay, these are also things that can help you to understand the concept. So the way the thing was applied, so it was applied to a certain problem or a certain area of study, and that can give you the whole concept behind that study, just the application of the study. And as much as possible, most papers that you should write or should read should have application in real life. Else we don't know what how beneficial that is to humanity, right? And how do you approach such part of the paper? Or is suitable for, let's say, methodology, introduction, results and discussion section of the paper. You see things like concepts, applications, relationships, and all that, right? That's where you can find things like this. And you approach it by mapping, okay? So actively as you are reading, you are mapping out the thing. Okay, so the first thing they did was cleaning the data. After they clean the data set, or they merge the data first, or they collected the data first. So collection of data, cleaning of data, removing of empty variables. Then they come to the modeling, building the model, testing the model, running initial parts of the model, binary data. How do I optimize? So optimization, all these are different techniques put together or different concepts put together. If you don't actively mind map or connect these together, you cannot replicate it in a different research. Okay, so you can just take a paper. How did they go about the whole research? By the time you are done, you have a mind map for your own research. Just copy the whole thing and put it in your research. The way they followed it, especially if it's from a very good paper or very high-ranking paper where it's clear to you and you can adapt. It may not be connected easily on the paper or it's so dead, but you yourself have to actively connect the concepts that are within that paper and adapt it to your study and see, okay, this part, what can I do about it? What can I refine about it? If I cannot do anything, then I have to substitute that particular concept with something I can do. If I don't have the skill at that level, then I have to learn that skill to be able to apply this concept. So it's about connecting the concepts together. As you are reading, can you do this? That will also help you with your further research. Then the very last part, which is you are building evidence, which a lot of us read because of this reason, right? We are just looking for answers or some evidence to support a statement you have made. Yes, here is just the proof of the concept, right? As much as possible, I made a statement or I want to do something. Is there literature? Is there evidence? Is there a reference I can connect to? Yes, you can do that. But as you are doing this, are there other details and technical information that you can easily connect with each other? So the connection is always there. You must connect the ideas together so that it doesn't seem like just words or just another paragraph or just another sentence. We are actively looking for evidence, and this evidence must support our research as much as possible. And after getting all this information, what are you going to use it for? You should ask yourself, after reading the paper and feeling like you didn't get anything, you ask yourself, what information did I get? Even if it's 10% or 2%, what can I use that little information for? And the only way you can do this is as you are reading, you are taking notes. You are taking notes of the evidence. You are taking notes of the evidence so that in future, you can reference back that same evidence when you are writing your paper. So far, any questions? Any questions so
I
far?
have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so under the concept, at the beginning, you made us understand that reading the paper doesn't mean reading everything. And here we are looking at concepts where there are connections between things that have been written in the paper. So, and we also know that papers have sections, right? You have the abstract, introduction, and all of that. So should you be, and taking the analogy, for example, should you be applying this at every section that you are reading, or there are particular parts of the paper that this application makes sense or comes alive? Thank you.
Okay, so for every part I mentioned where it's suitable for, it doesn't mean it is only that. So for concept, I said when you have the methodology section or the introduction section or the resource and discussion section of the paper, you could get a concept. You could get the concept also from the abstract, right? But usually we should not see the concept from the abstract because the abstract is just a teaser for us to keep reading the paper. But the concept is suitable for the methodology, introduction, and resource section of the paper, right? However, in other parts, it could be there. You can't find the concept from the references. You can't find the concept from conclusion. Perhaps it could be there, but what we are trying to do is connect each concept together, and mostly we'll find it in the methodology section, or sometimes even the results and discussion or the introduction. So at which part of the paper are you reading? There's a particular approach to that. If it can apply for all, then that's good. You do the whole P, A, C, E, R in abstract, even at the title, abstract. If the author list, you can get that, you do it. Then you come to introduction, then you come to literature review, the methodology, results and discussion, conclusion. That's not possible. That all the PACER approach may be applied to all. So it is best suited for certain levels of the paper, and then you have to just do that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Any other question? Any other question? That's the whole PACER approach. The P stands for problem solving or the procedure. The A stands for the analogy. The C stands for the concept. The E stands for the evidence, and then the R stands for the reference. Any question? This is just one approach to reading a paper. Of course, I'm going to continue. I just want to know if up to this level you have a question. Okay, so I'll focus more on the methodology, and basically I'll group all research into three. Since I know there are some social sciences, engineering people, and business people on this score, I decided to take one example each for these areas so that just in case I can convince you that all research that you may do may fall under three types of methodology, right? So we have the association research, okay, where we try to connect two or three things, variables, condition and effect, all those things they say. Okay, so let's look at the business example. You're analyzing customer behavior by correlating sales data with marketing campaigns. Okay, so this is something that you are associating one thing, one variable with another variable, or one variable with multiple variables, right? So this kind of research, the approach you use here is an association research. So you are looking for link between two variables. In engineering, maybe you want to investigate the relationship between material properties and the performance. Okay, so how does the property or a certain property of the material affect the performance that you are looking for a specific application, right? In social sciences, you want to examine the association between education levels and income. Those of us who like gathering data and doing all the survey and the questionnaire and all those things. Always, it's a association between one thing or the relationship between one thing and another variable. So when you are looking at methodology or reading a paper or even your own research, trying to write a paper, and it's an association research, then you should know that clearly you must tell us what relationship you are trying to find out between one variable and another variable, right? And then we also have the necessary research where this is exactly trying to solve a problem, okay? However, you are looking at how do I call it? How the various parameters linked to that problem tie up in one question, basically. It's something that, okay, so if I need to solve a particular problem, what are the necessary things I can look out for? Or what are the factors to consider? Oh, that sounds like social studies. Factors to consider when you need to do something, you need to solve a particular problem. Okay, so you are testing whether eliminating a specific marketing strategy affects overall sales performance, helping determine if it is essential for success. Okay, so those who like factors to consider, if factors to consider is in your research somewhere, then you know that you are here somehow. Even in that, you can still look out for an association research, but the focus of your work is to find out something that ties up to answer one particular question. In engineering, removing a critical safety feature from a product design to see if it leads to failure or not. Social sciences also says that analyzing the impact of a law by studying a region before and after its repeal and all that. Okay, then we have sufficient experiments, or what we call sufficient research. Okay, for business, it says that introducing a new pricing model to see if it alone can increase customer acquisition, right? In engineering, if you add a component to a system, is it better to increase or decrease? In social sciences, implementing a specific intervention like a community program to assess whether it is sufficient to improve local employment rate. What our advice is, combine all these three as much as possible. Okay, your general topic may be one type of them, but at each level of application your research, you can merge some of them. Not entirely say my research is purely association or it's purely necessary or it's just sufficient. Sufficient meaning that the variables are quite limited, so it's just one, right? And necessary, lots of factors combining, and then association is where you find a relationship between these research. So as much as possible, when we are developing our methodology, we can think along these lines and see at which stage or at which part of the research we can do an association research, a necessary research, or a sufficient research. Any questions so far? Once again, there's silence. So I'll go back to this same old chart, which I always suggest people should read following this particular method. For those of you who have been here more than once, you might have seen it, and I'll still go back to it because it works. Okay, so at the first stage, you are only focusing on abstract, introduction, and conclusion. Okay, why do you do this? You do this because you have some questions asked by your supervisor and you don't have the answers to it. You have an assignment to do and you quickly want to find out if this paper should be downloaded or not. Or you are just in that casual stage of looking for a topic or a research interest. Then these are the parts of the paper you should focus on, right? And then perhaps after a few reading of abstract, introduction, conclusion, you now decide to build a vocabulary of terms, the keywords, the terminologies that are used. So you look at one term in, let's say, management, and then you go back into your dictionary or wherever you can find the meaning of that word, and you build the understanding towards that. Once you've gathered enough muscle of reading abstract, introduction, conclusion with a very large database of words, technical words in that area, then you can go on to the very tough part of the paper, which is the methodology, where such terms will be used often, right? You can look at recommendation of further study where such terms will be used. So if you don't have the understanding of that field from the abstract, introduction, conclusion, and the literature review part of the paper, then you cannot attack the methodology at all, because these parts will use the tough words, the technical words, or the very confusing concepts, right? And with time, of course, you get to that stage where, based on people's results and the way they discussed and concluded, you can now decide to what? Solve a certain research gap. And the 7 types are there in the other resources that have always been shared on this platform. And the cycle keeps going on. You realize that after the decision stage, you need to now champion another level of curious stage, keyword stage, refined keyword stage, a decision stage. You start a project and you realize there's another level of curiosity you need to fulfill. And then you keep going until the identified research gaps that you believe you can fulfill or fill. In that case, you can do it until your project has come to an expected end or a certain conclusion that you want to conclude. Any questions so far? Any questions? Because I have come to my end of talking and try to fulfill or fill the silence gap here. Any questions so far? No one has a question about what I just said. This is just a tip to help us also in trying to read our papers. Any questions? No questions. Okay. All right. If there are no questions, I'll move on to another part and hopefully I should finish in the next 5 minutes. However, if there are questions, I will want to answer the questions. Okay. So the next question that came up in the survey was, how do we get research ideas, right? How do we, perhaps we have a topic, but we don't know what to do with the topic, or we have a research interest, but you don't know where to get the ideas from, right? So I'll just give you some tips or some places you can go and look for, right? The first one that I'll give you is look out for pediatric journals. And for the big guys on this call, they'll look at, huh? What is it saying? Yes. Go to pediatric journals and try and skim or scan. I said don't use that word, but I'm using it again. Through the papers in very low quality journals, very low, as low as it can be, right? And look at the approach they use to try and solve a similar problem that you may want to do in the future, right? It's just the analogy of you watching a bad movie and you now feel like you are the director of the movie. No, this part should have been done this way. This part, the actor should have done this and all that. If you see a very bad work, it may trigger good suggestions in your mind. And you saying all those behind the scenes criticisms or suggestions that you would have loved to give that reviewer or that particular writer to have approached that research that way, you could have also done it. Or maybe that will start your thought process of starting the research journey, right? See a bad paper, as bad as you can find. Well, maybe you don't know what a bad paper is. I'll give you a list of pediatric journals. You can just go there and just be looking at things there and then try and download those papers and see how bad, even if it's just a formatting, you now tell yourself, no, I'll never write a paper that is poorly formatted. It's a plus. Okay. See bad work enough that you decide not to let your work become that bad. So your professor will not say, go and rewrite everything again, right? Don't go for the good works because sometimes it's so intimidating. Go to the bad works and then start from there. That's one way. The second way I'll suggest is go back to Europe. You are in Asia or wherever you are now, but I'll say focus on Europe. I'm not saying leave wherever you are now. When I say focus on Europe, a lot of European, I think some other continents may do it, but I don't know. What I know is what I'm telling you. Most European universities publish PhD or master's position, usually PhD positions, with a topic and even a breakdown of how the topic should be done. So why are you struggling with looking for a topic? If you are in a similar area, it's there on the website. Just go and download it. We are looking for a PhD person in management and science to solve this. They give a topic, they even give you resources, even sometimes reference paper to start the whole work with. So that's one place you can, most of the European universities, because of the way their PhD is structured, you are tied to an industry. So the problem is already there. You don't need a problem. It's there. It's there on the screen, waiting for you to come and look at it. So go to most, if you don't know where Europe is, okay. You can go to German websites, you can go to Norway, Netherlands. I think these ones are enough. Even UK, right? I think UK does not fall under Europe, then I don't know. But what I'm just trying to say is most European universities have published the top trending topics, waiting for you to come and read it. And perhaps once you start that journey of that research, there could be a collaborating lab for you. And you could go there on a free trip because you are solving something, or perhaps they read your paper because you have solved that PhD topic, and maybe they never got a PhD person to fill that position. This is one place you can go for and then get free topics to start your research with. Okay. Another place you can also get topics is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, people use it for various things, but you have to know the people who are actively posting in your field, right? Follow them, subscribe, like, share, whatever they say. Keep looking at their pages. Perhaps the person is from the industry, will be giving you every time out of their rants, you see something that is very like a key problem in the industry you can solve. Perhaps the person also is in the research field, so will publish something or just an informal post where they may just release a statement that will trigger an idea from you. So you can go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn should be where you should be, not Facebook. This thing is on record anyway. So aside LinkedIn, you can also go to ResearchGate, get a profile account there, and follow those who are necessary to be followed concerning your field. Whatever paper comes up, whatever topics come up, whatever questions, sometimes you can also put your question there and then somebody may decide to answer you. So it's a good community also that you can go there scouting for ideas. Of course, your supervisor is also one source of idea, but unfortunately, they usually confuse the student because they themselves don't know what to say. But that's just by the way. Another way you can also get very good topics to solve is by reaching out to international collaborators. So wherever you are at this moment, look outside your school, look outside your country, look outside and look for somebody outside. Of course, through LinkedIn, you can do that. Just send them a text. Oh, I really like your post. And before you go there, you've read more than 5 of their posts, so you can know what to say. Don't just read one post and say, I like that post and I've been following you. No, no, no. Let them feel good. Okay, oh, I've been following your post. It's really interesting the way you carve this topic. What do you think about this topic? And what are some of the things that are likely to happen concerning this topic in this area, even in your country or in my country? Is there a way we can hop on a WhatsApp call or a Zoom call, and then you pick it up for them, depending on how you are friendly or can build relationships and can maintain them? These are ways I would suggest to anyone who wants or say, I don't have any idea in mind to work on my research and I'm stuck. Remember, I've not mentioned anything about literature, and it's intentional. I know you can get ideas from literature, but most of the time, if you are not experienced, you read and you are confused what to do. So if you are a beginner, don't attempt looking out for ideas from the literature. But most Chinese professors will say, go and read, you will find something. No, you will not find anything. If you are not guided, but of course, if you're a guided researcher or you are very experienced, then you can find a lot of what is going on in the literature at that moment. But to start, or if you feel you have a research idea block, this one is not writer's block, you can start from there and probe some further topics. Large language models like ChatGPT could help, but there also have to know how to do the promptings. Okay, if your prompting is not that good, you get some feel that perhaps it's good, sometimes not good. But what large language models are usually good with is they bring in aspects of the research that you may not originally look at. Perhaps you are doing something with data science, and then it brings in the factor of maybe something from the health sciences. So that's what ChatGPT or any of the large language models can contribute to your research ideation process. But aside that, those that I mentioned, I think is enough to keep you started. So 8:51, I have 9 minutes more to close. Are there questions? I'll put the feedback form in the chat. If you have any feedback concerning the session, you can let me know. whilst we wait for the questions. Any question, any comments, any feedback? We are done. We are just waiting for 8 more minutes and then we officially close. Questions, comments, feedback?
Yeah, so I would want to say thank you for your time. And there was one thing that you mentioned that there was one thing that you mentioned that I believe that it is worth sharing a bit of light on, with the fact that there are times that you have the questions, you have the research questions, all right, and you are just trying as much as possible to read in that light or in that direction. But then trust me, there are instances where you keep reading, and the more you keep reading, the more you keep getting confused as to what exactly you want to solve in the literature, right? There is one thing that I always do. When I pick up about 5, 7, 10 papers and I read them, I just want to jot down some key points and then just leave it that way. Try as much as possible to take a walk. And then the moment I try to walk away from it, that is when I feel like I am getting the ideas. But trust me, if I'm with a paper, I'm with the laptop, and then I'm reading, I am just reading because I feel like I should be reading. But the moment I step back, that is where I get the idea. So always when I'm working, I have my phone with me. The moment something drops, I want to just put it on my phone just to narrow down on my search further. So I think it's an approach that as young and upcoming researchers as we are growing up and then being confused with whatever that is in the literature, we can try as much as possible. At times, the way to look at it is to step back a bit and then look at the bigger picture. And that is where maybe we may have to see the exact problem that is really in the. So I'll end here. And I think there's a hand up, and maybe if you can take that from me. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a bit distracted here. Was there a question or it was just a
No. It was something I wanted to just add on to whatever that you shared with us.
Sure.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right. There's a question. Please go ahead.
Okay, I had my hands up. I think it's a contribution more than a question on finding the research ideas. So from my own experience, I think that sometimes attending conferences also help. At conferences, the speakers present most of the time their work, even though some present topics that they've been given to, and getting to the latter parts, they'll usually present maybe some future trends or unsolved problems, or maybe they did some research and this is where they've got into and what is left to be done, kind of things like that. So I think those conferences too can trigger some ideas for research.
Okay, yes, that's also very true. But okay, yeah, for conferences, the reason why I didn't mention it is usually before you go to a conference, you have to put in something, right? You have to get some paper or some poster. So if you have a poster, then you can go to that conference. But I'm not sure any supervisor would want to pay for you to just go and watch other people present if you are not presenting. So this is just an advice to a basic beginner who is now starting. Okay, he doesn't even have a paper to go and present at the conference. That's why I didn't mention conference. Okay. So yeah, but thank you very much for bringing in that. If there was a question there, then I didn't get it. Any questions? Okay, so the feedback form, and someone asked me for the predatory list, and that's what I was looking for. I got distracted. So if there are questions, please flow whilst I look for that. Questions. We have just 3 minutes to go. You can fill in the feedback form also whilst we wait, those who are dropping off. If no feedback, there's a gap, right? Today we've learned that there's a gap. So if you don't tell me what you want to know, I may be here and addressing a problem. I don't want to do that. I want to address the problem of the house, right? Yeah, so the feedback form should give me an idea what is needed. I'm still looking for that list. Yes, I found it. Questions. Questions. Should I assume everything was clear?
Sure. I hope you're going to get the materials as usual.
These days, I'm tempted not to share the material because when I share, people still come back and ask the same question. And follow-up question is, did you check? They said, oh, I didn't get time to watch the video. I didn't get time to read. So then why do I keep sharing them? These days, I'll hoard my information because people are not reading what they are supposed to read. Okay, so I'm sharing the link. Maybe I should just take a screenshot of this. Yes. So this is a list of the pediatric journals, official list. It's updated all the time. So you can always, it's in a chat box. Yeah. Okay, for those who cannot see the image, let me just copy the list. I don't want to mention a few of them on this call because it's recorded before some journal come and say I'm spoiling their market. Yes, so hopefully I'll be going on a very long sabbatical leave, so enough time for everybody to review the videos and the content before I come back. Everybody should be updated. Okay, let's review the content. It also gives us motivation to do what we do, right? Yes, and okay, let me stop recording. At this place, I have to stop recording.